There we go. Hello, hello. I'm excited to have this conversation with you, Abigail. Um, for people listening, Abigail also lives with spasmodic dysphonia or SD, and she originally came across my video, I'm guessing last year or earlier this year.
Yeah, earlier this year.
Yeah. And she's down in the Caribbean. So Abigail, you want to tell people a little bit about who you are?
Well, I live in Trinidad and Tobago. A practicing attorney at law, and I got diagnosed with spasmodic dysphonia about 7 years ago. And I saw your content and immediately felt a connection, and I reached out to you.
I'm glad we've been connecting over the past month or so.
Yeah.
And it's funny because when we had our very first conversation, I think one of the real, memorable pieces of the conversation was
Um,
as you were sharing your experience with me, I started having flashbacks of all my earlier experiences. And so today I'm really going to share kind of my journey with SD. And then next week we'll have Abigail share her journey on SD. So um, I think I was first diagnosed when I was 19. So that was in April of 2006. And at that time, I was a freshman in college. I was at Stanford, and I was also on the track team. And I remember that day specifically because I was getting ready to leave for my very first track meet down at the University of Texas in Austin. And I woke up that morning and my throat just felt weird, like I needed to clear something. So I kept doing one of the and
Right.
trying to clear, and I drank a lot of water and nothing seemed to happen. And I thought, oh man, am I getting sick on the day that I'm supposed to head down to my competition? So I was getting kind of bummed about that. But then I had to ride my bike over to the track where we were all taking off, and we were getting in the van to go to the airport. And my track coach kept asking me, "Hey, are you okay?" Like I was trying to talk, but nothing would come out. Or when it would come out, so and so
Okay.
it just kept cutting in and out.
Mhm.
I'm like, this isn't this isn't a sickness. This feels like something else. But in my mind, I didn't have kind of any kind of terminology or diagnosis for it. So I just kept assuming that if I cleared my throat, eventually it would go away.
Mhm.
So a few days later, I'm getting ready to compete. And I saw a number of the coaches that I met when I was going on my recruiting visits. And I remember before the pole vault started, I went over to one of the coaches and just said, "Hey, it's really good to see you. Um, Thanks again for kind of the time you spent getting to know me, and good luck to you and your team." And I could see all of their athletes. They were just kind of looking at me like,
The faces, like
yeah,
something's
like
wrong here.
yeah, like what's going on here?
Yeah.
And I didn't think about it and continued to go on. So fast forward over the next couple of weeks, it just kept progressively getting worse and worse and worse. And finally, it was getting so exhausting to the point where I didn't I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to go anywhere. It was just like, ugh, um, I'm done. And that summer, I decided to stay on campus because I was doing their summer theater program. And one of the acting teachers that I had, her mom was a voice coach back in New York.
Right.
And she said, "My mom's coming out here. I'll have her do some work with you, or we'll have you work on some breathing exercises and do some floor exercises."
Thinking it's
And
like some kind of laryngitis or something like that, right?
uh, and it felt good to lie on the floor, like I could feel my muscles
Right.
relax.
Mhm.
But when it came to actually making sound, I still kept having a problem. So um, it was it was great to have some additional tools, but it really wasn't resolving the issue. Uh, and so that just kind of perpetuated my frustration and my worry. But that was also the very beginning of my exploration into both kind of traditional medical um, remedies and kind of non-traditional remedies or more holistic remedies. So I'll stop that part there because now I think it's probably be important to give you some kind of context prior to what happened.
Right.
Um, so I've been sitting with this question for the past couple of days because I was like, what do I what do I share? There's a part of me that feels like I can't go back to that place because it just
Right.
doesn't have the same juice as it used
Mhm.
to have. And then
Mhm.
there's another part of me that feels like there's a different kind of lens that I'm coming from as I
Mhm.
look into the events that led up to kind of being diagnosed. So, you know, I think people need to know a couple of things. One, I grew up in Mobile, Alabama. So kind of the deep South. My
Mhm.
parents were products of the 50s, 60s, and 70s in the
Right.
South. And I'm also same gender loving. So for that to be kind of my life, to be in Alabama, to not be out, to not have any kind of um, community around me, and to navigate both the religious side of the South, the Black cultural side, and
Right.
then kind of my own who am I if I don't belong in any of these circles?
Mhm.
Like, what does all that mean, and where do I fit in? So I think the kind of big highlight that I have as I've been thinking about it over the past couple of days is I didn't know what safety actually meant, like coming from the South, right? And I think that had a huge impact on my anxiety. It had a huge impact on my depression.
Mhm.
I didn't feel like my relationships were real because I wasn't able to be myself in any of them, whether they were families, circles, or friendship circles, or colleague circles. There was always this piece of me that never felt safe. So
I
as
think
you
that's
can, oh yeah,
I
go ahead.
think that's actually one thing to note, that the precursor to the SD diagnosis,
Yeah,
it's so funny that we have that commonality of feeling unsafe from very early on in life.
yeah.
Mhm.
Well, when I think about it, some of my background is in nervous system education, which was
Mhm.
the interview that you saw. And when I think about that, the safety piece solely from fight, flight, freeze,
Yeah.
that was exactly what my nervous system was doing. And my whole way of racing and interacting with people was from this place of I need to be on hyper alert all the time.
Right.
I need to be very careful about what I say, how I say it.
Constantly.
I need to be careful about who I'm talking to and
Mhm.
what's the kind of potential ripple effect of
Right.
me saying something in this particular context. Is it going
Mhm.
to impact me? Is it going to impact my family? Is it going to
Mhm.
impact reputation and all of these different things?
Mhm.
So as you can imagine, like my world is getting smaller and smaller and smaller and more contained and more rigid
Yeah.
because I'm having to mentally go through all of this gymnastics in order to figure
Mhm.
out what can I say at this particular moment that will keep me okay until I wake up tomorrow and have to do this again.
Right.
So doing that from the time I was 2 to the time I was 18 and left college,
Mhm.
that's 16 years of rearranging and kind of doing all this mental gymnastics. So I think when I got to college, one, I saw going to California as my escape. So when I got there, life was going to be different. When I got there, life was going to be better. Little did I know that when I got there, college was going to teach me its own set of lessons that
Amplify. It was just going to amplify the situation. Mhm.
that I wasn't expecting between the academics at Stanford, the athletics,
Mhm.
getting used to figuring out my schedule and kind of being on my own in
Mhm.
a new
More
city, in a
stress,
bigger city.
more commitment,
Yeah.
more people to do mental gymnastics for before you have an interaction with them. Yeah.
Yeah. So it then, I think eventually, similar to your story,
Mhm.
my body and my system got to this point of like, I have no more capacity to hold on to any other stress or anxiety. So I'm just going to lock up and shut down. And you are going to have to learn how to move through the world from this limited kind of a space.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, then fast forward back to the times when I started working with practitioners and trying to find a remedy. Hold on just a second. Can you hear the dogs?
No.
Okay.
Mhm.
So fast forward, and I was I was looking for both kind of traditional medical advice and non-traditional advice. Um, when I when I ended up getting another voice coach, she was working with one of the ENTs at one of the local hospitals who work specifically with individuals with various voice disorders. And on his team, he had a speech language pathologist. So they ended up bringing me in, doing the the scope, and having
Vasos.
me
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
do the rainbow fish quote and trying to like read the little paragraph or whatever, and
Right.
like and he said, yeah, I think you have some kind of dysphonia. But I'm
Mhm.
not sure if it's muscular tension dysphonia or spasmodic dysphonia.
Mhm.
And I was like, all right, so at least now I have some kind of a diagnosis that I can begin diving into and really figure out kind of what's going on with me. So he wanted to get a second opinion and then sent me back to a doctor at Stanford. And again, that doctor said the same thing. You definitely have dysphonia, but I don't know if it's muscular tension or if it's spasmodic. I was like, all right, two people who are well qualified in their fields, people
Yeah.
respect, they've seen this before. Let me kind of dig in. So I got connected to, I think, the National Spasmodic Dysphonia Association. I think it's something different now.
Right.
Um, and that's where I began reaching out to people. I think there were two women who lived in the Bay that I ended up meeting with who headed up different chapters. So I met with them, I talked to them. But similar to you, as I started to get to know people at the support groups, none of them looked like me.
Yeah.
None of them were as young as me. Most were 60
Much older.
plus and white.
Mhm.
And so for me, I'm like, it's great that I found someone with SD or found other people with SD, but you all are in a different stage of life. I'm
Yeah,
19, 20 years old. I'm like,
yeah,
how am I supposed to have a social life and do all of these different things? Um, and then live with this kind of for the rest of my life. And they they were really helpful and supportive, and I stayed in touch with them for maybe 2 or 3 years as I kind of went through kind of the beginning stages of my healing as ski journey. But then when I think I was going to be a junior in college, um, I found that there was a National Center for Voice and Speech out in Denver.
mhm,
And at that time, I was also interested in theater, and I found out that the Voice Center was connected to the Denver Center of Performing Arts.
mhm,
So on campus, they had some opportunities to get a summer internship somewhere, and the school was going to pay me for it. So I was like, all right, let me apply to
sure.
this. I'll apply to be an intern at the National Center for Voice and Speech. I'll also get to see what the Denver Performing Arts Center is like and spend a summer there with some more experts in the field. So I ended up doing some research um, around SD. And I think kind of my research was looking at what are the how do holistic practices support people as they go through their SD journey.
Right.
And at that time, I was going through my own kind of a personal transformation with religion and kind of figuring out where do I lie on the religious versus spirituality spectrum. And and so I was looking at I was reading different books, like Eckhart Tolle
Right.
and The Power of Now, and then watching YouTube videos from other spiritual teachers,
Mhm.
where it allowed me to see, okay, part of the holistic piece is having some kind of higher level connection.
And the
Part of the,
spirituality.
yeah,
Mhm.
spirituality. Part of it is finding kind of somatic exercises that um, can help me relax the body and help me relax the throat. And some of it was just about having fun and playing and, not taking myself so seriously because I was so kind of focused and determined that I have to be a doctor when I go to Stanford. I have to be a doctor as I try and, you know, get through these med school classes. And then when I had my breakdown my junior year, I'm like, I don't want to be a doctor, and I like I don't even want to compete anymore. Like, so I ended up dropping all of these things, which was actually connected to kind of my holistic journey. It was like I was forcing myself to do things that I didn't want to do,
Right.
and the pressure that that was putting on me to perform, how I was talking, how I was connecting with people. And what I eventually realized over time was, for me in particular, I needed to have kind of the hybrid model. I needed the
Both.
traditional medicine model and I needed to do the holistic. So I ended up getting Botox injections into my vocal cords. Um, and there was this sense of relief because it was like, wow, okay,
That's
I
going to
found the
help.
thing.
Hmm.
But it was so inconsistent. So yeah, it either lasted for a really long time, like 9 months, or it lasted for a short period of time, like 5 to 6 weeks.
Right.
Regardless of um, the dosage. So part of what the doctors did with me was we played around, do you put injections in both vocal cords? Do you put it on one side?
Yeah, because kind of clarify that point so people don't think you got Botox in your face. It's Botox injections in
Yeah,
the vocal
in the
cords.
larynx, yeah, in
Mhm,
the vocal
mhm.
cords, but they go through here.
Yeah,
And then so I used to joke to make kind of light of the situation, like, yeah, my face will be sagging, but my neck will
yeah, your
always look
throat will
young.
be much better.
So we did that for a number of years. I think I did that from 2007 until
Right.
December of 2011.
Mhm.
And in December of 2011, I was finishing up a show and I said, I actually don't want to do the injections anymore. I'll have to figure out another solution, but this one,
They said because at the end of the show, you didn't feel any different.
um, I did. I felt different because I felt different for a number of reasons. I felt different because the injections did help. So it made it sustainable. But at the same time, by that time, I'd been working with a couple of vocal coaches and had more vocal exercises and practices that I could do on a regular basis by myself
Right.
that could potentially help me. Um,
Mhm.
and honestly, I just got tired of getting injected in my neck.
Right.
It was painful. Yeah. It was painful. And then I never knew how long it was gonna last.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so I was always like crossing my fingers for like, oh, I hope I get another 9 month kind of
Yeah.
go. But then you
Because
never know.
because I'm sure there's a group of individuals with SD who they want to try Botox. Prior to us chatting, I
Mhm.
researched it and I was like, that's the plan. I'm going to get Botox shots. And in your experience with it, I'm kind of like, maybe that's not the solution. Mhm.
And I think what I what I would tell myself again is I wouldn't I wouldn't change going to get the Botox injections.
Mhm.
Um, but I wouldn't look at it as the remedy to cure
Right.
SD and make it go away.
Yeah.
Because I thought, oh, if I get the injections, then
It will go away.
eventually it will go away.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. I've been rambling for a little bit,
No,
so
but
I'm yeah.
I think one point of distinction between you and I is how quickly you came to accept your diagnosis. Yeah, because you went to
Mhm.
a specialist, you got a name, and then you went on to seek healing. That wasn't my experience. And
Yeah.
when I do my story of next week, we went to a very long journey of getting a diagnosis and pretending for quite a number of years that I didn't have a sleep, that it didn't exist. And I think that makes it even more difficult to live with the condition if you don't get to a place where you're like, I have SD, I have to accept this, I have to work with it
Yeah.
instead of allowing it to work against me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. My acceptance journey of SD has been it's obviously more than it was back then,
Mhm.
but it still has like a long way to go. Like there are many days where I'm like, it takes so much energy and effort to have conversation and get the words out
Yeah,
and to engage with people that people can't see or they don't understand unless I tell them.
yeah.
Otherwise, they think I'm nervous or they think I'm sick or they think,
Mm-hmm.
something's wrong with me. And I'm like, oh,
Like
you
you
have
should be
no
wearing
idea.
a mask.
Yeah.
Maybe, maybe what you have is contagious. Yeah. Or why are you so nervous when you're not nervous at all?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So the acceptance piece was interesting. Let's talk about that a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So I think honestly, when I was 24 or 25, I decided uh, I wanted to pursue a coaching degree or a coaching certification. And so I got certified as a cancer coach. And my mom was my very first patient. But my mom got her diagnosis the week after I got into the program.
Right,
So for me, that was kind of a divine timing thing and
right,
aligned with kind of my spirituality piece of like, all right, I guess I'm just going to be guided to wherever I need to go and do whatever it is I need to do. And, you know, we'll all make it through this cancer journey somehow, for better or for worse. And one of the things that I had to accept with my mom's diagnosis was I couldn't make the cancer go away.
yeah,
And I couldn't go through the treatment for her, I couldn't go through the
yeah,
surgery for her, I couldn't do any of that. And so I really had to look at the question or sit with the question like, how do I enjoy myself or enjoy the time with my mom while I still have it
right,
as she goes through her cancer journey?
right,
And there was something about that that helped me shift the way that I think about SD. It was like, all right, this is kind of the thing that I have to live with.
mm,
Granted, it's definitely not cancer. I don't like have to do any kind of radiation or go through any um, surgical processes or anything, which is wonderful. Um, but it is something that I have to grapple with on a day-to-day basis, and it does make my interactions with people more difficult. It does impact me professionally. It does impact me
yeah,
um, relationally and romantically, um, because I'm going to have to tell people about it eventually, or
yeah,
I'm going to have to kind of make it front and center because people hear it anyway.
yeah,
Or they see it anyway as I'm like contorting my face trying to get a particular sound out.
right,
And I think figuring out how do I live more enjoyably even while I'm living with SD has been probably one of the greatest gifts that I've given myself in terms of my acceptance journey. And there's still many days where I'm like, I just want it to go away. Like I want
yeah, leave me
to,
alone.
yes.
Go over there. Yeah, give me a break.
uh,
Mm,
and I also have to know that it's not. And the grief that comes with it. And you and I think we talked about this a little bit in our last call around, you know, there is no space for men to grieve. And
mm,
particularly, there's no space for Black men to grieve and look weak or do
mm,
any of that. And
mm,
so I'm having to kind of figure out how to hold it all together and navigate it um, when I'm around friends or when I'm around family or when I am in a professional setting
yes. Mm,
because I'm wanting people to see my competence
mm,
and I'm also wanting them to not see my SD as, me not being able to do
perform.
something, yeah, perform or interact with
Mm,
people. So on all of my slides and my presentations, I've started including a little slide about me. I have my professional slide and then I have my
Right.
personal slide. And on the personal slide is a little interesting fact you should know about me is that I live with spasmodic dysphonia. And here's what that means. So some
Right.
days my voice works great, some days it doesn't.
It does
If you
sound.
can't hear me, yeah, if you can't hear me, then let me know
Mhm.
and I'll attempt to repeat it again.
Mhm.
And
I will
and people
attempt to repeat it again.
and what I found is that people actually really just appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because they don't have to guess what's
yeah,
happening to you.
yeah,
Yeah. I think for a long time I thought the price of my determination in life was this diagnosis. I felt like if I was a little less ambitious, because I could not accept no for an
yeah,
answer in every space. Family, friends, education, everything. I couldn't accept no. And every time I got a challenge, I made a point out of overcoming that challenge. And I think when you do that at a very young age,
mhm,
particularly like in the teenage years,
mhm,
that massive amount of exertion of energy, I think it kind of shocks the nervous system. Like you are too young
yeah,
to have to be on this level of drive for such an extended period of time. You shouldn't be thinking about getting so far at such a young age. You should be thinking about things that individuals your age should think about, because I wasn't much of a I couldn't deal with like much like you and your mom. My
mhm,
grandmother was ill. I was telling you that. And
yeah,
I could not accept her diagnosis either. So I was like physically seeing her declining, getting ill. And I was telling myself, nope, you are going to come off that bed, you are going to walk, you are going to get better. It's not going in this direction. And she still passed away. And when she passed away, I had to accept that because I couldn't do anything about it.
yeah,
And and even when I think about a lot of other instances with friends, etc., my friends, like close friends moving away and stuff like that, you come to a point where it's like you do not have all the answers.
mhm,
You do not have the power to change every single circumstance. No matter what you think in your head, no matter if you think you're some kind of member of X-Men or whatever you think you are. And I think if I came to that realization much earlier in life, I probably would not have gotten this condition. At least I at least I console myself by thinking at least I console myself by thinking that it may not necessarily be true, but I definitely see a connection between the amount of energy I exerted to making the impossible possible at a very young age compared to what it has resulted in, this
yeah,
SC diagnosis.
yeah. I um I remember I think before getting to the kind of real acceptance piece, I was fighting with my brain is broken.
Yeah,
Yeah, like my brain is broken. Like what's going on? And one of the probably one of the most memorable moments I had was my sophomore year. uh, in college, I was I was sitting in my living room with the lights out during the day, and my two roommates who were also on the track team with me were at track practice, and I got a phone call from the Stanford Hospital because I'd gone to the emergency room like a couple of months earlier, and they the billing office called and they said you owe $50,000 for this visit. And at that point, I'm on the phone talking to the lady or trying to talk to the lady, like,
I do
let
not
me,
have $50,000.
look,
I don't have
me.
that. But,
Oh, my
mm,
God.
mm,
And she's like, "What'd you say? I can't understand you." And as you know, the SD gets worse and worse, and the sounds get choppier and choppier.
yeah,
And it's almost like I'm physically in the position of screaming into the phone, but
yeah,
nothing is coming out. But what I'm trying to tell her is you need to call my parents because it's their health insurance and
right,
they can resolve the problem. I can't I can't even talk to you right now to answer any of your questions. So,
right.
call them. And
Mm,
so we were probably going back and forth for maybe 3 or 4 minutes. And I got so frustrated that I just hung up on her.
right.
And I ended up crying probably for a good 10 minutes after that phone call in that dark apartment
Yeah.
on the floor
Mm,
because like this is horrible. Like, if this is how I have to live my life, this is horrible. So,
mm,
as you can imagine, that only exacerbates the anxiety and the depression.
yeah.
And I'm like, if this is how I have to live life, I don't.
But that's a commonality again that we have because talking on the phone is a luxury and people don't realize that when you
Mhm.
have SD, there's something about communicating through a medium
Yep.
that makes SD worse.
Yes.
So for a long time, telephone calls was a no-go for me. And
Yep.
I would literally prefer to write you a 10 paragraph text. I would prefer to send you 5,500 emails than have one conversation on the telephone with you because of that. What did you say? Beg your pardon. Excuse me. Abigail, you said something. Can you just repeat what you said again? And that just every prompt makes it worse. Because
Mhm.
you literally have to have the same conversation twice or three times. So what would take you a minute? What would take someone else a minute to say? It's literally taking you 3 minutes to say because of that need to clarify, that need to repeat what you're saying,
Yeah.
and that adds to the anxiety. So the next time you have a phone call, you're thinking about your last phone call and you're ready. It's like living with this constant kind of having a premonition. So
Uh,
while they having that second phone call, you're like, the last phone call did not go good, and this one isn't going to go well either. You are going to ask me to repeat myself in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then it just starts all over again. Mhm.
mhm. Mhm. Yeah. You and I were joking about the automated services where it's like, enter your birthday, enter your social
Yeah,
security number,
yeah,
you can either say it or you can press it.
yeah, I'm
And
going to press it.
for most years, I would go and press it. And even though it's convenient, it's it's so disheartening all at the same time
Mm.
because I go back to these moments of like before I knew I had SD or before I lived with SD, I I could say the number into the phone and there would be no problem.
Yeah.
Now that little task alone is something that I might be able to do that day, or I might not be able to do that day, depending on how my voice is.
Yeah. And
Exactly.
it gives you a kind of phobia in relation to certain numbers, certain words, like the number three. For me, for a very long time, like I could not say three clearly. So,
Mhm.
like when I go to the airport and check in, and they're like, can we have a phone number? My phone number has three threes in it. So they would be like, can we have a phone number? And I'm like, I started to just put my phone number on my phone, like type it in, and just like show them. Because it would be like three, and they'd be like, what? Two? No, three kind of thing.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that just gave me like a kind of it deepened my fear for public interactions.
Mhm.
Yeah, because I'd be like, I don't want to say certain numbers and I don't want to say certain words.
Yeah. I had a voice teacher who I told about it, and she was kind of helping me, or she was helping me work through it. And yes, he used to give me a hard time. And I would say I had to figure out how to get to the why. So I would add yes, because it was like, yes,
Yeah.
right? Yes.
Mhm.
Or it became this
Mhm.
full body thing. And
Mhm.
she would just say no, say yes. I'm like, yes. And like and I would get so frustrated because I just wanted to be like, this is what I have to do in order to get to the
Yes,
Y that you
yeah.
want me to
Mhm.
pronounce. So
Mhm.
leave me alone. Yes, you might hear a yes, but
Yeah,
getting to yes.
yeah,
And that ended up putting in um more awareness about the words that I have to say improperly
yeah.
in order to say them properly.
Mhm. And the kicker on this is both of us, we engaged in professions that require us to speak.
Yes.
So I'm an attorney and I lecture. You're into theater, you're into coaching, you're into all of that. So we both have professional obligations that require us to teach, to speak. And
Mhm.
that being said, someone would say, so how do you navigate having SD and your professional life? That's a story for a whole other time. That's a whole segment
Episode.
for that's a whole episode on its own
Yeah.
because it is beyond gymnastics. You said gymnastics earlier. It is beyond gymnastics to get yourself into a position where you can perform optimally in a
Mhm.
professional space. And it's like playing dice because some days it might work and some days it just won't work. And on the days that it doesn't work, if you're not careful, you could like seep into such a depression.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it kind of interferes with the way that you think about yourself. If you're
Yeah.
not careful, it could tie to your competence. You have to manually kind of make that disconnect and keep telling yourself, this is not a reflection of my competence. My inability to speak on Tuesday is not a reflection of my competence. It's really just that I have this diagnosis and I'm trying to work around it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a big part of the reason why I tell people at the beginning, because I um I refuse to let people think I'm dumb. I'm
Right.
like, no, I'm a pretty intelligent human being.
Mhm.
And for me, I always say the universe had a sense of humor and gave me a voice disorder and put me in communication, the field of
Yeah.
communication.
Yeah.
So I have to pay my bills.
Yeah.
I like being in front of people. I like teaching. I like
Mm.
helping people be better communicators. And it gives me a very unique perspective on communication, both physically, or not just both physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Like, are you connected to what you say, or do you feel safe as you're saying what you need to say? And how that plays into how we communicate. So I'm really looking forward to that segment, and I'm also really looking forward to your story next week.
Yeah. Yeah. I think even for others listening in, that maybe they have some type of dysphonia. It
Mhm.
it it may not be vocal. They have some other type of condition, Parkinson's or some other neurological condition, and or even like you were mentioning, somebody with a lisp
Or a stutter.
or stutter, you
Mhm.
know, these conditions, they can give you a high degree of anxiety. And I think dealing with the anxiety that's connected to it is also another episode, because you kind of have to separate the two.
Mhm.
There's the condition, the medical condition that you need to treat with, and there's also the anxiety that arises out of it.
Yes. I'm looking forward to our future
Yeah.
conversations. Is there anything you want to say, or any closing remarks you want to make before we
No, I
end
think we
it?
can wrap this up.
Yeah.
Excuse.
Yeah. Well, I really thank you for listening, and I appreciate you, Gabrielle, yeah, Gabrielle, Abigail, for uh, yeah, encouraging me to share more of my story and to witness, you know, that story. I think one of the pieces that you mentioned in our very first phone call was um, your desire to normalize this for
Yeah.
individuals in Black or other minority communities who don't see other people with SD or voice disorders or speech disorders, um, and who are also working professionals.
Yeah.
And I didn't really, I didn't really realize the importance of normalizing all of this for us until I had the conversation with you. And
Yeah.
so, I'm, as I mentioned, I'm really excited about what kinds of topics are going to emerge as we continue our conversations, because I think this is really going to be helpful for a lot of people. And I appreciate, getting to partner with you in this endeavor.
I think, Donnie, I think it was very courageous of you to document your experience, because that's how I got in contact with you. Looking at YouTube, seeing a video, seeing you having a discussion, and I thought to myself, if he's brave enough to record his to put on record his experience with spasmodic dysphonia and kind of own it, kind of
Mm.
just put it out there for people to know, listen, this is a real thing. People have this condition. These are some of the challenges that are associated with the condition. That made me feel seen. That
Mhm.
made me feel kind of like I'm not alone and I'm not the only person walking around here with this condition, because, like I told you before, it's very isolating. I literally do not know another person that has SD in my community or in my country, for a matter of fact. So for
Yeah.
the last couple of years, I've been walking around like, anybody out there? Anybody out there? Anybody out there with this thing as well. So seeing you, it really gave me a lot of solace, and I am absolutely thrilled for us to communicate, for us to go through this process together, and for us to record our thoughts about Esty.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I hope you have a good rest of your day. And for everybody listening, thanks for listening in. And we will see you in our next conversation where Abigail will share her story.
Great. Bye.
Yeah, bye bye.